Okay, so welcome to this organising and displaying data. And we're looking at some ideas, hopefully share some ideas and give you some insight on how potentially you could deliver this module. So we're going to be looking at how we can approach this, so ideas for how we can approach this and deliver this unit. Going to be giving some tips, exploring how we can develop students in confidence in organising and displaying data, and give you an opportunity to share your thoughts about how you'd approach this as well. So by the end of the unit, the students are going to be in a position to be able to identify a new suitable application to enter, edit and format information in whole number formats, decimal places, currency, date and time, and the creation of date and charts. So this is very much, it's part of the create and edit unit, but it's focused on how they're using data within that unit. So what I think we'll do is we'll skip that for the moment because we've just got a handful of us, and we can explore that more as we go through. So facilitator-wise, I'm James Keith, so I'm a learning and development manager based at a group of colleges in the southeast. I'm doing this work with the ETF. And Nick, do you want to just introduce yourself briefly?
Yeah, I'm working on the ETF project for essential digital skills. I used to be a teacher of adult education at Sheffield College.
That's great, thank you. So as you're familiar, I think most of us have gotten very familiar over the past 18 months, 2 years with how to interact. Because there's so few of us on this, please just unmute your microphone and contribute as and when you feel you've got something you want to share. I'm really interested in hearing from you as we go through. So as I've touched on already briefly, context of this unit is exploring how we can develop different pedagogical approaches to teach the creating and editing and the use specifically of data in that unit. We're going to go through and highlight some different ideas and opportunities that students can use. And I've said already, there's going to be lots of opportunity for you to contribute your ideas and thoughts to how you would approach this. So the specific aspect of the unit we're looking at is the creating and editing documents unit, and it's 2.1.1, which is use of a suitable application to enter, edit, format information, including text, numbers and images. And we're really focusing on the use of data in this particular workshop, how we can display and present that data and information. So looking at a model, and it's a model that we come to and explore in a bit more detail, and it's a model that's also played out through our community of practice, which is available on the Enhance website, which link is in the chat. It's about this opportunity with you and your colleagues who will hope to be involved when you start delivering this. It's about having that workflow of how, especially with a new module such as this, how you can go about supporting the team in delivering, getting them confident in different approaches, how they can share those approaches. And this is just a model taken. It's something taken from issue 37 of Intuition. And it's just going through that process of sharing. So the hope is that that you will go back to your organisation, Louise, and share with others who may be involved in the delivery, and also join in with the community of practice to keep sharing different approaches and learning as we all go about determining how best to deliver this particular unit. So what I thought we'd start with doing is just sort of unpicking the specification a little bit. I think it's worth just thinking about what are the students being asked to do, and what are the challenges that we're facing, what are the student challenges that are facing when it comes to delivering this unit. So what I'm going to do and feel free to unmute microphones. I'm just going to stop my screen share for a moment.
Gail has just joined us as well, James.
Hi, Gail. Great to have you with us. Thank you for joining us. So what we're doing is we're exploring the. Let's go back a slide for you. So the unit we're looking at is the creating and editing unit in the Central Digital Skills, and we're focusing on specifically the user suitable application to enter and edit and format information, including text, numbers, and images. So it's that formatting of text and numbers specifically is the main focus of this particular session. Where we're at now is just starting to unpick the specification. So what I've got here, I'll just change my screen. So hopefully.
Oh, share the screen, James.
Yeah, I'm just going to do that now. Thank you. Right. So let's click share. So what we've got there is we've got a Jamboard, and I'm going to stick a link in the chat. For those not familiar with Jamboard, it's a means of allowing lots of people to contribute to a whiteboard type screen. So I'm just going to copy the link and paste that into the chat for you. So if you want to contribute, you've got two ways of contributing because it's a small group. You can unmute your microphone and contribute that way, or you can, for those not familiar with Jamboard, you can click and add a post-it note. You could, or I'm going to do that. I clicked on the wrong one after all that. Let's go back. So you can click and add a post-it note, and you can type on there. So I'll just put hello just for the purpose of this. I hit save, and that will appear on the screen, and then we can just drag it and move it to where we think it is. So the sorts of things I thought would be good to explore is if we're looking at delivering this particular unit and we're focused on how we can support students to use suitable applications to enter and edit and format information, including text, numbers, and images. And we're getting learners involved in using numbers as whole numbers, decimal numbers, currency, and date and time. What sort of skills do we think we're looking at needing the students to master initially? So where would we, what sort of skills would we think would be those are the first things? So I've put use of spreadsheets, but do feel free either to contribute to the Jamboard or to unmute your microphone and contribute your ideas.
I can't see the link in the chat pane, James.
Okay. I apologise. I've shared it with just one of the participants, not everyone. Let me do that. Okay. Let's paste that again. Hopefully that's now visible to everyone. Yep. Sorry about that. So as I say, if you'd rather just unmute your microphone, please feel free to do that. I'll give you just a couple of minutes to think. So the questions we're looking at is initially, what do we think the skills are that the students need to master? And then the second one is what are the potential problem areas that the students could struggle with? So have a think about those and either add them to the Jamboard or feel free to unmute your microphone if you prefer.
I definitely think use of spreadsheets is an issue. I think some students just are terrified at the sight of Excel.
Absolutely. I think, I mean, another one I was thinking of was just the terminology associated with it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I can see we've got some posts coming in now, which is great. Using formulas, yes. Creating charts. Understanding of mass, decimal, absolutely. So yeah, I'd agree with all of those. Yeah, understanding exactly what they're being asked to do, I think, is a huge one. It's being able to apply that practically. Okay, so that's great. Do add any more if you think of any. So we've talked about the skills we think that students need to do, and I think we've also touched on some of the potential problems that students could struggle with. From a teaching strategy, thinking about either yourself if you're going to be involved in delivering this, or colleagues who are going to be delivering this, what strategies do you think could help us with some of these particular problems and struggle areas that we've identified here? Absolutely, saving versions, file format information, absolutely. Different versions, always a challenge. So let's have a think. What are the teaching and learning strategies that we think we could use to solve this? From my perspective, I think we have to grow their confidence in navigating navigating the software, getting used to using the software in lots of different occasions, maybe the same type of software used in different ways. So it's very much practice. I think that's a really valid point. Just going back to the challenges, we're aware that some of our students only have access to a mobile phone, and that absolutely does present additional challenge when it comes to creating content and editing spreadsheets, especially. Editing spreadsheets is incredibly challenging if we're only looking at phones. Yeah, absolutely. Repetition of tasks, so practicing and finding situations where the skills are useful. So I think absolutely by buying into people, if they can see opportunities to contribute and they can see how that information is relevant to their day-to-day, then they're more likely to engage with it. So yeah, absolutely. Anything else that we think we could do? So we've talked about making sure that they can see the relevance of it. We've talked about, it's been mentioned, that giving them lots of opportunities to immerse themselves in the software and use it multiple times to grow in confidence and repeat doing certain tasks. Okay, so let's move on to that final column then. What are the potential problem areas that staff could struggle with when it comes to delivery? I think we have touched on some of them, such as students' access to devices. One thing I'd be interested to hear, and feel free if you just want to unmute your microphones, and I appreciate you're all at different parts of where you are going to with potentially moving to the delivery or maybe involved with the delivery of these courses, is I'd be interested to know whether when you're thinking of planning, absolutely, thinking of planning the delivery, are you looking at having students on site? Are these being delivered remotely? Those, it'd be fascinating to hear what people's ideas are there and how they're considering going about delivering these, because certainly I think each method of delivery, whether it's remote or in person, has potential challenges and benefits and disadvantages. So it'd be interesting to hear from those. Just touching on some of the posts that have come. Absolutely, we need to make sure ourselves and our colleagues are confident in their use of spreadsheets. Absolutely. Yeah, difficult to motivate learners engage with the topic. Yes, I think if we look at how students engage with our maths and English in further education, I think there's always been a slight barrier to maths, and I think presenting data and exploring data and formula is something that doesn't necessarily come naturally to people. So it is about how we can find different ways to engage them. But that's been really useful. Are there any points that people want to pick up on feel free to unmute the microphone if there's anything you want to pick up on, anything you think we've missed. Absolutely, knowing how to use different devices. I think we did a session, didn't we, Nick, a while back on using different devices. So you can access recordings of previous sessions, I believe, and we'll talk about that towards the end. But absolutely, moving from device to device is difficult. Some of the suggestions that I will come on to shortly will look at how we can mitigate those changes between working on different devices, so it's easier for students regardless of the type of device they're working on. But that's great. Thank you for contributing to that. Oh, so let's giving you spoilers now. Spoiler alert. Let's quick jump ahead, right? So that's great. Thank you for contributing to that. So the next thing is, well, we've looked at, we've explored what we think the challenges are. We've identified that we need students to have opportunities to practice and become familiar with navigating and using a piece of software. So I was really interested in what examples could we use? How could we get them interested in using that data and look at how they can engage, picking subjects that they would engage with. So I've got some ideas, and I've put some ideas there. Let me just escape that sec. So I put some ideas there, but I would be interested in what ideas people have. So some of the ideas I had is it could be that we create a book club reading list, or it could be a shopping list. It could be our favorite movies. It could be we compile recipes. I was looking at ideas of how we could make data a bit more interesting than just sums and numbers. But I'd be really interested to hear from you on what other types of activities you think we could use as a way of creating data that students could then practice with. So as there's so few of us, I'm going to tempt people into using the microphone if you feel confident to do so. Any thoughts that people would want to share, and what types of data we could be playing with to get the students engaged? I don't know, Gail, if you have access to a microphone.
I do have access to a microphone. It's just in the background. I don't teach this. I'm one of the regional specialist leads. I was in here so I could just see what you're up to. But yeah, lots of data that they can pick up. So one of the things I use is things that come up in newspapers. So I get the Guardian 5 top stories, and there's always masses of data in there. Yeah, and things around finance, lots of, because I do a lot of math stuff. So lots of different things that we could look at, really.
Great source, yeah. So using what's out there in the press. There's usually some data that's being published as part of news stories, so that can be something that can tap into them. But I think that's a great example of finding what's out there already that's got some examples of maths in there. It could be, depending on when you're doing it, it could be weather temperatures or currency exchange ahead of holidays. Would be a nice way of getting some data that they can play with. So I was just thinking about the different types of data and thinking about when you're running it, thinking about the types of students that you have, what would they find most useful and most interesting. Obviously, we've got the Bake Off on the telly at the moment, so I was thinking, well, could we use it to create a recipe book? So I was having a play with this idea of recipe books. And exploring how we can, because there's a whole variety of different bits of data within that. I was looking at also how else could we create data. So any other thoughts in addition to what's been shared and what I've shared there on the types of activities we could, themes or ideas or activities we could use that involve data. So I don't know if the other participants have got any thoughts. I don't know if we've got anything coming in on the chat, have we, Nick?
I was just going to add that on the online modules section for this, on the enhanced website, I thought there was a really good example there, and I can put that in the chat in a bit, that it said not to start with the maths. So because this is about learning the essential digital skills, it suggests not starting with the maths necessarily, but as Gail said, if you're looking at something, and you were saying there, James, it's relevant to them, and start with that. So it's about telling a story. So if you can sort of take it from that aspect, then you then build up that it is a spreadsheet or it is a chart, but not starting with how do you add this up and then work towards that in learning the maths. So I thought that was quite interesting.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's building their confidence, and as I've touched on already, I think lots of us have had not necessarily positive experiences when it comes to maths and the learning of maths in our time at school. So that's great. Lots of ideas there. So we'll go on and explore some of those a bit further.
James, can you just read those out for me, because it's too small for me to see? I can't.
Yeah,
see
yeah.
them.
I should have opened it up here. Bear with me, Gail. I'll open it up on the screen. Oh dear, look, I've got my ideas floating around. I've got too many tabs open. Let me put that. Let me do that.
All
So
right.
the ideas I had, and I'll share the link in the chat now. So
Thank
you
you.
can see this full screen. Is I had a book club reading list, shopping lists, favorite movies, and favorite recipes was all, and the rest were just ideas. And this is just a PowerPoint slide that I've created, which I give everyone edit rights to, so people can contribute, similar to a Padlet. It's a cheaper way of doing Padlet because I don't have to pay for it. But that link's in the chat. If people come up with other ideas as we're going through, you can edit that.
This would be for specific learners, but maybe something about footballing statistics, top scorers and things like that.
Absolutely. If there's an interest in sport, I'm not a football person, which is probably why that didn't come to mind. But yes, for me it would be Formula One and racing drivers, probably the championship stats or whatever it may be. But yes, anything like that with numbers. And as we've all said, it's about making it interesting and engaging to the audience that you've got. So let me move on, and we'll move to some practical ideas of how we could approach this. So I was thinking, based on those ideas that we had, trying to make it a bit fun, trying to make it less threatening. I was also thinking, how could we also get access to data? And obviously we can do lots of research to create that data for students. So I was having a play, and one of the things I found within Excel, which is available if your organization that you work for has a subscription to the Office 365 version, is an automated way of populating data relating to particular topics. And this was quite a fun thing. So let me just show you that. I've got a video that I'm just finishing editing, which I will add in the chat, and I will also post to our community of practice that goes through how I did this. So you will have that, which is a bit more detailed than the quick run through I'm going to show you here. But what you can do is if you go to the data tab within Excel, you'll find that there are various collections, various topics that they have got. And if you add those titles into a spreadsheet, and then you go and select that text, and then you choose the particular topic that it relates to. So I've chosen Bond films. I can choose films. And what it does is it searches for information about that particular film or that particular topic. And then it highlights other information about the film. So we can add information. So very quickly, I can create information about this. So I can choose the production budget. And I can start to find different information. As you can see here, I've added the director, I've added how long it's running. And it provides me with all of that information. So very quickly, I can populate a data set, which I can then share with my students. So they've got some information to play with. And as I say, you can do all sorts of different things. So looking at all of the categories there. And what it does is it will find other facts and information automatically about it, which you can then add to your sheet. So this is something that I wouldn't expect the students to do, but those involved in the delivery and the teaching of it, it would be a quick and easy way to create a data set, which your students could then use for their activities.
We've got a question from Angela, actually, about, is the data set function only on 365?
I haven't found an equivalent in Google Slides yet, in Google Sheets yet, but as they typically mimic themselves, I would think that if there isn't one yet, there'll be one coming along very shortly.
It's a great labour-saving device, isn't it?
Well, yes, it's. I think one of the things we picked up on was how we need the students to have time to practice and get familiar with using data. And one of the things that is so time consuming for teachers is having to find those data sets. Yeah. So I thought this was a nice way to do that.
So Angela's just asking, can you show where it is again? So it's the data tab, isn't it?
Yeah, so let's go back. So we've just opened, oh, not go back that far. If I go back to the home menu, so I've just opened my spreadsheet. I've typed in my topic. So this could be any of the topics that they list there. I then go up to the data tab and there's a drop down. Now, I'm purposely using the browser-based version because this can be accessed by anyone with the browser. It doesn't require them to install it. And under data, we've got that drop down and you can see all of the different types of things that appear there. And as I said already, once you've turned it from being text into being something that it recognizes, you've then got lots of other additional information that you can add. And it's a really nice way to create something. One other thing that's quite useful, sometimes you find that the text that you are provided with is all in one box. So you found some information. It may be in a Word document or it may be on a website, but the way they've formatted the information is it's all in one space. When you paste it into Excel, you find that the information, as you can see here, we've got the title of the film and the date appearing in the same box. Well, there's something called flash fill, which when you start separating that data. So I'm taking the date and putting it in a separate cell. I can't do that. What it will allow you to do is it will automatically, if I select those, delete the rest of those ones. No. What it does basically is it automatically separates the document. So you can see I've done it here in Blue Peter fashion already. Flash fill is just there. So it's under the data menu, flash fill, and there is an equivalent in Google as well, which allows you to separate the data and make it into separate columns, which is really useful if you're finding that the source you've got, as I say, puts it all in one space. Someone's going to ask, what's it referred to in Google? What I'll do is I will make sure when I post into the community of practice, and I'll also update the slide deck to include what the term is. Off the top of my head, I've forgotten the name of it, but that's quite a nice way to just to speed up again the process of getting a set of data that students can experiment and play with. So what else could we do with this data? And I was racking my brain thinking, well, what else could we do with the data? And I've given some spoilers already, I think, but I thought we could potentially create a poster. So this is in PowerPoint, and I'll make sure these templates are available. So what I've done is I've gone into the design tab, and you could achieve this in Google Slides as well. I've gone into the design of the, gone into the design tab. And one thing that people aren't necessarily aware of is if you go to slide size and customize, you've got a selection of different page size formats already predetermined, so you can change it to a different format. And I find PowerPoint's much easier to use initially than Word when it comes to tables, and it can make it look more visual, more interesting. So I tend to convert it into A4 and portrait, and then I start to play with it. So I've inserted a text box, I've inserted a table. For those not familiar, you've got the insert table option there. And then I could get my students to start playing with populating that information. So initially it may just be copying and pasting the information through from my set of data that I've created. It may be that instead of having it so formatted like that, we could pare back the formatting, and then we could encourage the students to format it. So the great thing with it being a PowerPoint is it's very easy to duplicate the slide, and I could start to pare this back, just put in title. I could remove the image and just add instruction, add image here. And we could make that about whatever we want it to be. So it may not be movies. It may be, as Nick was suggesting, that it's something related to football. So top scorers, whatever it may be, it could be edited and updated. And you could share that with the student, and it would just get their familiarity with editing and inserting information and using tables and formatting without having to start from scratch. And then as they grow more confident, you could pare back the information that you provide on the template for them, so that they're having to. So it may be you don't put enough cells in, so they have to insert a row or they have to insert a column. But you initially start with giving them all of the formatting, so they're just having to insert the information. But as they get more confident, you could pare it back and require them to insert a row or a column to grow their confidence in working it with those different things. And it may be that you want to eventually have an artifact that the group have got something to share, especially if it's a group in person that they're there in front of you. So you could take that a step further, and you could go, well, okay, let's make a recipe book. And again, it's the same format. I've created this by just inserting shapes and images. So we go on, so we've got the title, I've inserted an image, and we could show how they've, when you insert an image, you can edit the appearance of the image, so you could go through and get them to do that. And again, I've inserted a table. Now, I'm not a baker, as you can probably tell from this made-up recipe, but you get the idea. You can start to populate information, and it's about trying to make it fun and interesting and engaging for the students. And you can see that's one that I've populated, but you could have one that's blank. And again, as I've said already, to differentiate it and to help them as they grow in confidence, you could maybe just have the headings and require them to insert the row and the column as you go. And so that was just a couple of ideas of how we can make it slightly more fun, grow them in confidence in using tables, presenting data and different information, using images, just growing their confidence in editing it and evolving it. And from your perspective as a teacher, it's once you've got your initial template, it's very easy to duplicate slides if you want to differentiate them. It's very easy to share it with a student so that they can edit it and practice on it. So are there any questions about any of what's been mentioned on the use of PowerPoint and creating recipe books and posters? Okay.
It's nice to get away from Excel, I must say.
Well, yes, and that's part of the reason I was thinking of PowerPoint, was because we're still presenting information, but we're not quite as busy and as overwhelming as Excel. So we've touched on creating a dummy data set, and as I say, I've got a video which I'll finish editing today, and which goes through in much more detail how to do that. One other thing, not wanting to overwhelm people, is you can add data by using some code. So you've got not code, what's the term?
Formula.
Formula, thank you, Nick. Yes, you can. So if you do equals between, and you use this formula, it will put numbers between 1 and 1,000. And then what you can do, having done that, is you can add a title, and then by going to format number, you can change it into currency or into date or time or whatever particular type of text you want. The other thing you can do is you can also do the same with date. And it's the same thing, it's random, that's your formula, and it gives you random dates. So it's another way that you can create data sets nice and quickly. And having got one, you can just drag down and it will add extra information related in the same format as you go. So that's just a couple of formula which I found whilst I was looking for ways of populating data, and literally all you do is you put equals in the box. Oh, we'll get the formula now, and they're the formulas. So I'll make sure to include those on the spreadsheet when I add the video, on the presentation when I add the video at the end of this session. Okay, so let's keep moving on, where we're making good progress time-wise. So let's just jump back to that original presentation. So one of the things that I think lots of both the people who are going to deliver this and our students find daunting is all of the terminology. We talk formula, we're talking about the different menu headings, the data menu heading, all of those different things when we go into use a new piece of software. So it's about building their confidence and their familiarity, so they start to grow confident knowing what they'll get when they click on each of the tabs and what some of those terminology mean. And one way I found helpful to do that is the use of flashcards, just so they start to recognize the writing and start to understand what some of those terms mean. My favorite flashcard creator is Quizlet. And just very quickly, I can show you what Quizlet looks like. Obviously, you could use PowerPoint and just have the term and then the definition afterwards. But Quizlet, you can get a free log on. It's quizlet.com. I've got a video guide on how to use it, which is included in this presentation, which will go out. But when you create a new flashcard, it asks you to, in one column, let me edit this one. You can see I've got the free version here. So these are my sets. So it allows me to add a title and a description and an image if I want. And then I've got lots of different ways I can display these. So I can display them as flashcards. So I could share them with the students just by clicking the share, getting a link, copying the link and adding that to whatever mechanism I want to share with the students. And the great thing about these is they work beautifully on mobile phones. So they're really nice. They can flick between the two. Obviously, a bit distracting that you have the ads, but that's the disadvantage of having the free version. But they're a really nice way of getting the students familiar with the terms. So the way that I would look at those would be, I would look at using them as a way of just growing their familiarity with the terms that they're going to see in the spreadsheet or the presentation or any of the menus that they're going to use. We just jump back to Excel. So if we're looking at that data, or we're looking at formula, or we're looking at the way that the information is, so the use of decimal point, any of those sorts of terms could be created within the flashcard. But what's nice is you can use it in different ways. So in addition to just using it as a flashcard, there are various other ways it presents the information. Let's not use learn. Let's go back to test. So you could do it as a test. So it's a quiz. You could use it as a quiz format. So having created the flashcard, it can be used in a massive variety of different ways. There's even a game called Gravity, which I've never really quite understood, but watch out for the red asteroids. So it's a bit of fun, and you can see things come down, and they've got to answer it before the asteroid hits the planet at the bottom. But it's a bit of fun. But it's what I like about it is it's, as from a teacher perspective, having created and inputted the information, you can use it in different formats with the students. So that's Quizlet, and I think it's a great way just to get them familiar with some of the terminology that they need to be aware of when it comes to creating and editing spreadsheets or creating tables in PowerPoint. So that's doing the glossary. We've gone through and I've done the demonstration on creating a data set and editing it with PowerPoint. So as I said, we've got a video which I'll share on. That's my guide to using Quizlet. One final idea I had with generating data, and it may be that it's a step too far, but I thought it's worth a share, and that was the use of forms. So both Microsoft Forms and both Microsoft and Google have forms. And what's nice about forms, for those not familiar with forms, is that they automatically collate the data that's been inputted into it. So you could ask the student, depending on where they're at, and this may not be something you do initially, but maybe something you do later on in the unit, where you get them to create a simple form, or you create a simple form and they populate it with information, and that in turn generates a spreadsheet with answers. So just to show you what a form would look like. So this is the interface, and Google Forms is exactly the same. So you could have a series of questions. There could be multiple choice questions. There could be even a rating question, and all of those responses appear with and are presented as charts, and or you just get your responses, but you can also view them as a spreadsheet with all of that information created in a table format. So that could be a way of generating that data, and the teacher creates the form initially, and students populate it with data, or potentially, depending on as your students grow more confident, maybe they create the form and look at how they can get the data that they want. But that's just another way of doing it. I think initially I'd absolutely start with a dummy data sets, but that may be something as a way of stretching how you approach creating data sets and using them with students. As I say, the responses are automatically collated into a spreadsheet, so you've got a starting point there. And it may be a way of, if we looked at, say, Nick's idea with the football, it could be everyone responds by telling them who their favourite team is, who their favourite striker is, or whatever it is. You know, it all depends on the interests of the group. But that's another way in which you could get data, in addition to creating your own data set as well. So any further questions or thoughts that have popped up, Nick?
Not really, no.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's fine. We'll carry on. I just can't monitor the chat as well, and
No,
I'm always wary
no,
of missing questions as they appear.
Yep.
So let me jump back to the presentation.
I do think it's worth mentioning that the forms can also be used just for formative assessment kind of thing of students, you know, just checking that they're all on the same page in terms of their understanding of the topic you're teaching.
Absolutely, I think they're a great way to gauge students' confidence at the start of a module. It's also useful. I've found them being used as a way of identifying what type of device a student has access to, if you're delivering it remotely. But both forms, and both Google and Microsoft Forms, have a rating feature, which you can see is the star one there, and that's quite nice. Just allows them to, you can have up to 10 stars, and they can just rate their confidence within that, and that's quite a nice way of just of determining how confident they are with the type of activity, or just identifying any prior knowledge they may have. So yeah, absolutely, Nick, that's a great idea. Okay, so let's move on. So we've touched on the community of practice, and it's a great place to find additional information. You do need to sign into the Enhanced site to contribute to it, but let me just show you that. So just open that up. So we go back to the home page. So when you go to the Enhanced digital teaching platform, I'm going to test myself now, and then you click on the introduction from the drop down, the EDS drop down to Introduction to Essential Digital Skills. You get to this page, and you'll find that the tab for the communicative practice appears just there. And then when it comes to using it, we've got a word cloud here, which will allow you to filter and find posts relating to topics that have been tagged with those particular tags. And you've got also the ability to search just by typing in the boxes as to what it is you're looking for. And if you're looking for resources specifically, you can tick the resource box. And if we look down the post, you can see Nick's last post. You can see it's tagged as a resource. So you can see those which have resources included within them. But it's a great way just to see what others are doing, ask questions. You can see someone's talked about Quizlet. Just there I can see. So lots of ideas. So it's really worth jumping on that if you haven't already and having a look at what's there. I will certainly post the resources I've showed today. I'll post onto the community of practice as well. And if any questions, and a lot of times when I do these webinars, or I attend webinars like this, I think of questions after the event. So please do feel free after the event. Once you've seen my post, do feel free to respond to it by asking questions, and I'm more than happy to come back to you if you have any questions following on. So that's the community of practice, a great source of information and resources, and certainly where I'll post the videos and the templates, the recipe book template and that film poster template, I'll post there so you can make a copy and make use of those.
Please don't be nervous about asking what you think might be a slightly dumb question on the community of practice, because the chances are other people are thinking the same thing as you are.
Absolutely, it's and much better to ask those questions. I mean, I've been looking through, and there's such a supportive community. It's growing nicely. Lots of people really happy to help and to respond to their colleagues and what they can do to help them. So let's just jump back to that. So that's almost me finished. So just going back to the last couple of slides. So there are other forthcoming sessions coming up. And what you can do, as well as looking at forthcoming sessions, you can also access the recordings via that page as well, I think, from what you said last time, Nick.
Yeah, that's right. But you have to scroll down the list. So the first ones are all the ones coming up. And then beyond those are the recordings of previous ones.
And there's other useful resources there as well. So hopefully you found that session useful. I'll make sure to share all of the resources. You'll get a copy of the presentation shared with you after the event, but I just wanted to open up the floor to any questions that colleagues happen If we can stop the record now, if that's okay, just so people may feel happier to ask